They were not just enslaved, they were hunted, possessed, and broken again and again, not for labor alone, but for flesh, power, and domination. In the brutal shadow of slavery's empire, beneath the whips and chains, lay a darker, quieter horror, one not often spoken of in textbooks or monuments. It is the story of black women, not merely enslaved, but desecrated, not merely owned, but violated by white men who claimed them as property, but used them as prey. This is not the past as it was taught. This is history off the map. In the sugar plantations of Barbados in the 1600s, British settlers brought with them more than muskets and trade ambitions. They brought laws that declared black women as property, no different from cattle or land. But while cattle were bred for profit, enslaved black women were used for both. Forced to reproduce more labor and subjected to the violent sexual fantasies of their masters. A chilling duality, reproductive machinery by day, playthings by night. Over 3,800 instances of rape and assault against enslaved women are logged in his own hand. In his diary, Thomas Thistlewood, a white overseer in Jamaica, kept meticulous records of his daily abuses. "I gave her a bit of saltfish," he wrote on one occasion, as if the rape was a fair transaction. Her name was Cuba. She had no voice, only pain. This was not rare. It was routine. Across the Atlantic, in the American colonies, Virginia codified laws in 1662 that sealed the fate of thousands. The law stated that a child's status, free or slave, would follow that of the mother. Every child born of such horror became another enslaved life. This legal twist, seemingly administrative, created a monstrous incentive. "No shadow of law to protect me," she later wrote in her harrowing autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, just to protect her body. White enslavers could rape black women and not only go unpunished, but actually increase their wealth. A prophet, a body with no rights, a soul with no sanctuary. Others ran. Take the case of Harriet Jacobs, born into slavery in North Carolina in 1813. She was pursued relentlessly by her master, Dr. James Norcom, paraded as a freak show attraction under the name Hottentot Venus. Her body, particularly her buttocks, was subjected to voyeuristic humiliation. He threatened, manipulated, and cornered her for years. To escape his grasp, she hid for 7 years in a crawl space under the roof of her grandmother's house. 7 years of darkness, isolation, and fear. She became both spectacle and specimen, a black woman reduced to a body, then 2 bones. In many societies, Akan, Yoruba, and Igbo women held respected positions as priestesses, market leaders, and mothers of lineage. What of the resistance? For even in chains, black women resisted, and the groans of the dying rendered the whole a scene of horror almost inconceivable. They resisted in whispers, in prayers, in poisonings, and sabotage. Some took herbs to induce abortions, refusing to bear children for their abusers, and many were punished brutally, lashed, branded, or murdered for daring to say no in a world that never asked for consent. White planters would often force enslaved women into concubinage. Sometimes with the false promise of freedom, they called them. There was Saartjie Baartman, not enslaved in the American South but trafficked from South Africa to Europe in 1810. Colonialism and slavery not only uprooted people from their land but shattered social orders that once protected women's dignity. When the Haitian Revolution broke out in 1791, some of the earliest targets of violence were these very white enslavers. Audiences in London and Paris gawked at her. Scientists poked, prodded, and photographed her, claiming her anatomy proved racial inferiority. Dressed as a soldier, she fought alongside men, defending the hero fortress. Her courage was legendary. While men were often left to rot in their own filth, women were repeatedly brought above, sometimes to be washed and prepared for inspection, other times simply to be raped by the crew. She, like many others, had bled beneath white hands, and Stephanie E. Jones Rogers, they were her property, have peeled back the sanitized narratives we've long been fed. Why does the narrative of slavery often stop at cotton fields and chains without diving into bedrooms and birth records? Now she chose to fight. She died in 1815, her body dissected and displayed in a Paris museum until 1974. Their mixed-race children, born out of coercion, formed a new caste in society. neither free nor enslaved, but still marked by their mother's pain. Her story is not disconnected from slavery. It is part of the same architecture of dehumanization that turned women into objects, into curiosities, into wombs for exploitation. But let's return to West Africa before the slave ships. The concept of a woman as property was foreign. In fact, in some cases, matrilineal inheritance determined power. By learning what was done to them, we fight the erasure, we resist the forgetting. On the slave ships, gendered trauma began immediately. Women were kept below decks, chained together, naked. According to Olada Equiano, who witnessed the voyages firsthand, the shrieks of the women, were they silent? Complicit? Victims themselves? That too is a story waiting to be told. And yet even in this hell, black women carried fragments of culture, songs, braiding patterns that mapped escape routes. There are more stories like this, hidden, raw, and real. Spices hidden in hair. They whispered strength into their children, even as they feared they might not survive the night. In the French colony of Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, sexual abuse was as endemic as sugarcane. But freedom was never truly offered, only controlled rest in affection, ownership wrapped in desire, like this video. Subscribe, share it, comment below. Women who had suffered in silence finally saw fire on the horizon, and many helped light the flames. One woman named Marie Jean took up arms during the revolution, but what she fought against was more than political, it was deeply personal. In Brazil too, the same pattern unfolded. Portuguese colonizers raped enslaved African women with near impunity. Over time, systems of colorism evolved, privileging lighter skin and erasing the original crimes that shaped these societies. Historians like Deborah Gray White aren't a woman. Their research reveals that the abuse of black women was not just the work of a few evil men. It was systemic, structural, and legally protected. And yet many of these stories remain buried. Ask yourself, why don't we learn the names of these women in school? Is it because it is too painful? Or because the truth threatens to crack the fragile mirror of Western history? And what of the legacy? Today, echoes of this trauma persist in medicine, where black women's pain is often dismissed. In beauty standards that exoticize certain features while shaming others, in the silence that still surrounds the histories of women whose bodies were battlegrounds. The descendants of the enslaved carry more than bloodlines. They carry memories, some whispered, some wept, some still waiting to be named. There is no easy closure to this story. But perhaps by speaking their names, even the ones lost, we begin to reclaim their dignity. We shine a light on history's darkest corners, not to shame, but to truthfully remember. And yet, there's still more. What about the roles white women played in these systems? If this journey moved you, unsettled you, or opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. So if you want to keep uncovering the truths that were never meant to be told, this is History Off the Map, and we're just getting started.